Peace, peace. This is your host, Selah Shalom, and this is the Cosmon teachings in the words of Jehovah and his angel ambassadors from the Cosmon Bible, OahspeBible. And I just want to touch on a quick topic of the Bible being a collection of books, a collection of scrolls. Because a lot of times we look at the Bible and we just think this is one whole scroll or just one whole book. And a lot of Israelites may claim that the Bible is their book. But what they fail to realize is that the essence of how this book was compiled was through different scrolls, a collection of scrolls. Not just one scroll. The Hebrew Torah or the Tanakh would be one scroll out of many that was incorporated in the book. Now, the book starts off with the 7-day creation story. Then it moves into the flood account. And then from the flood account, it goes into the genealogy, and then it gives you the story of Abraham and so the patriots. So let's move back a little bit, because the Torah was given to Moses during the ending of the 12th dynasty in Egypt, during the ending of the Middle Kingdom. That's when Moses received the law, statutes, and commandments. And when Moses received these law, statutes, and commandments, he was giving them to the Israelites to set up community living. That's what the law, statute, and commandment was for. Thou shalt not this, thou shalt not that. Thou shalt do this, thou shalt not do that. That was the essence of the law. So if the law basically wasn't saying specific things in such as that nature, then you couldn't say that that was the law. For example, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not murder. That's a law. But if I told you, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, that's not a law. That's coincide with a story. So the question need to be asked, if Moses was given law, statutes, and commandments, why is the Holy Bible starting off with the creation story? Shouldn't it start off with, Hear, O Israel, the Lord thy God is one? That's how that should be the very first chapter 1, verse 1 in your Torah, in your Tanakh, in your King James Bible. That should be the very first verse. Hear, O Israel, the Lord thy God is one. But that is not the very first verse. So the question need to be asked, if that's not the first verse, and in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth became the first verse, how did that happen? How did Israel go from, Hear, O Israel, the Lord thy one, Hear, O Israel, the Lord thy God is one, being the very first law expressed, to, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth? See, like I said, this is a collection of stories. And the Hebrew Israelite scroll, doctrine, law, statutes, and commandments is just one scroll out of many. Now let's go to the 7-day creation story, since that's the story that's starting off the Bible. I don't care if it's the King James Version, I don't care if it's the Septuagint, I don't care if it's the Tanakh. All of them start with, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. So with that being said, what is the earliest account we have of the creation story of the 7 days? That'll be the Babylonian text, the Amun Elish, the 7 tablets of creation. So basically, that's one of the scrolls that was incorporated in the Bible to make up the Bible. So technically, the 7-day creation story is a Babylonian influence on the Bible. In return, your Tanakh, your Septuagint, that's the very first story that starts your Bible, is the 7-day creation story. So right off the rip, you have Babylonian influence in your Bible. And if you have Babylonian influence on the 7-day creation story, we're speaking of gods in this creation story. So that means that you have Babylonian influence of gods in your Bible. So when we talk about, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, that's not the creator. We already established that. Not only is it the Elohims, that's something that the Israelites put on as being those powers to be, the Elohims. But prior to the Israelites having that, because remember, the Israelites incorporated the 7-day creation story because it's Babylonian in origin. So we have to go to the origin of these gods. And we find out and investigate, find out that the Babylonian gods are basically the Anunnakis, Enlil, Enlil, Anu. So the gods of the 7-day creation story are Babylonian gods. So that's one thing to address in your Bible, of a collection of scrolls, that the first scroll used to open up your Bible is a Babylonian scroll, Babylonian influence. Now the question need to be asked, how did this influence get in the Bible? Well, to answer that question, we got to look at the time period, the timeline. When did these things occur? Now, roughly, these creation stories started during the 23rd arc cycle after the creation of mortals, which is from 3953 BC to 1553 BC. That's the time length of the 23rd arc cycle after the creation of mortals. So it was during this time period that the Egyptian and Sumerian creation tales came about, before the Israelites got their creation tale. So now, in Sumer, during that time, you had the Sumerian creation myths, and then in Egypt, around that time, you had the Egyptian creation myth. So, how did, coming back to the question, how did the Babylonian influence end up in the scriptures? Now, the answer to this is right in your Bible. If you go to the book of Daniel, quickly speaking, Daniel chapter 1, verse 3, it states, "And the king spake unto Espionaz, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel, and of the king's seed, and of the prince." Verse 4, "Children in whom was no blemish, but well favored, and skillful in all wisdom, and cunning in knowledge, and understanding science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace, and whom they may teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans." So there you have it right there in chapter 1, verse 4. It tells you that the children of Israel, and specifically the Judites, was commanded what? To be taught and learn the Babylonian tongue. So with that being said, the Babylonians had influence on the Hebrews because they was commanded to learn the Babylonian tongue. And in learning the Babylonian tongue, you're going to learn the Babylonian tradition and the Babylonian culture. So after the exile, when the Assyrians and the Babylonians destroyed Jerusalem, coming back to the exile during the time of Ezra, is when you get your 7-day creation story. That's when they incorporated your 7-day creation story in the Bible, after the captivity. So coming out of captivity back into Jerusalem with the Tanakh, now you have Bereshit bara Elohim Haaretz. Prior to the captivity, it was, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord thy God is one." That's what they read, the law. But now you have a creation story coming out of your Tanakh, later on your Septuagint, and later on your King James Bible. So it's showing you that this Babylonian influence is still strong in your Bible. Not only is it strong, it starts off your Bible. So this is not even the word of Yahweh starting off your Bible. It's the word of a deity, a fallen angel, who assumed to be the creator, gave you a creation story, and you fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. And the OahspeBible is exposing this. So I already established that in the book of Daniel. It showed you that the children of Israel, the children of Judah, had to learn the Babylonian tongue. And in learning the Babylonian tongue, you're going to learn the customs and culture. Name me what language you will not learn the customs and culture of that language or of that nation if you learn the language of those people. It only makes sense. So I just wanted to show and prove that in the Bible you have Babylonian influence. Not only is the 7-day creation story of Babylonian influence, but what else is of Babylonian influence is the flood, the Epic of Gilgamesh. That's also Babylonian influence. That's some of the literature that the Israelites would have had to learn when they was commanded by King Espionage to learn the Babylonian tongue and literature. They would have learned about the 7-day creation story. They would have learned about the Epic of Gilgamesh. They would have learned these things. And in returning to Jerusalem, they incorporated these stories in their Torah, in their Tanakh. So I just want to express the fact that the Bible is a collection of stories, a collection of scrolls. And the Hebrew scroll is just one out of many other scrolls compiled in your Bible. So the same way they compiled the New Testament, they took a little bit of this and a little bit of that, they did the same thing with the Old Testament. Because if the Old Testament was genuine, it'll start out with, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord thy God is one." Even when Yeshua was asked the question, what is the greatest of all commandments? He didn't say, "In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth." What did Yeshua say? Matthew 22, verse 35, where the question was asked. Verse 35. Then one of them, which was a lawyer, asked him a question, tempting him, and saying, verse 36, master, being rabbi. Which is the greatest commandment in the law? So let's stop right here. So the question is being asked, which is the greatest commandment in the law? Let's see what the answer is. Verse 37. Jesus said unto them, Thou shalt love thy Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. Verse 38. This is the first and great commandment. Stop right there. This is the first and great commandment. He didn't say in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth was the first and great commandment. He said, Thou shalt love thy Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment. So ain't nobody questioning why is this not opening up in your Genesis account. That should be the very first law, statutes, and commandments. Chapter 1, verse 1 should be this. And then to make matters even worse, verse 39 states, and the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Verse 40. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. So with that being said, these are the first two laws of Torah. But when you open up your Tanakh, your Septuagint Bible, your King James Bible, it don't start off with that. It starts off with, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, showing you that these collections of scrolls was put together not in a particular order. They created the order as they went along. They modified the text as they went. But the truth is that this is not the Hebrew Bible as you think. The scrolls of the Hebrews is just one mixed in with the other scrolls of this Bible. So that's the question you need to ask a Hebrew Israelite. Why isn't the very first two laws of your Torah, of your Tanakh, not what Yahshua said? Why is it in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth? You never question yourself how that got in there. But I'm telling you, the Bible just means collection of scrolls. So these are collection of scrolls compiled, and the Hebrew scrolls is just one out of many scrolls that was compiled and used. So basically, the Bible has Babylonian influence. I'm going to keep addressing that so you get it in your head and you do the history of this. You have Babylonian influence in your Bible. You might as well consider this like a Talmud to a degree. That this came, the very first chapter 1, verse 1 is Babylonian in origin. It's not even Hebrew.